All right. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and kick off our webinar this morning. So thank you for joining us and welcome to One Network TV. This is Malis Jones and I will be your moderator today. Today we're going to be sharing some of the latest thinking on the next generation of control towers and how leading companies are leveraging them for disruptive results. Now a little bit about today's logistics. In regard to the format, we'll be focusing on providing content for approximately 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll follow that with a question and answer period. During the presentation, feel free to send us your questions via the chat, and we'll queue those up for the question and answer portion. We also want to let you know that the presentation, both the audio and the PowerPoint, will be available to you after the presentation. Now let me introduce our speakers. Seth Lippincott, joining us from South Africa today, is a research analyst with Nucleus Research. He focuses on areas of enterprise applications, supply chain management, application as a service, and security. Prior to joining Nucleus Research, he conducted research on supply chain resilience and business sustainability at the Institute for Business and the Global Context after receiving his master's from the Fletcher School in May of 2015. Seth is focused on international business and strategies for bringing innovative technologies to market. In addition, Adeel Najmi, Senior Vice President of Products at One Network, also joins us. Adeel is a pioneer in supply chain management, and he has guided successful digital transformations at over 25 Fortune 500 companies across diverse industries. He is a visionary and innovator, having created several breakthrough supply chain solutions and secured over a dozen patents. Adeel was named as one of Supply Chain Demand Executive Magazine's Pros to Know, and he holds a doctorate in industrial engineering and operations research from the University of California at Berkeley. A little bit about our agenda. Seth is going to speak to the state of control towers, a bit on the emerging paradigm shift and how in the maturity model, and speak to what's next. And then Adeel will review case studies, and then we'll transition to the question and answer period. And now, without further ado, I'd like to pass the baton to Seth.
Thanks very much. Very happy to be here. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Seth Lippincott, and I work with Nucleus Research. I wanted to give a little bit of an overview, first off, on what Nucleus Research is, what we do, what we specialize in. So first off, we are a quantitative research-based firm. We look at the value, the end customer value that they get from technology. We do this primarily through ROI analysis of deployment. We've published hundreds of case studies of different technology deployments across many different areas of business technology. We've been around for a number of years now, based out of Boston. And the thing I might draw your attention to is that our methodology is consistent with what you would expect to understand if you're a CFO or if you're in the finance department. So when we're doing an ROI analysis, it's backed by the National Association of States Boards of Accountancy. So that's the underpinning for our research, and when we're looking to validate an ROI analysis, that's the methodology that we use. So the first thing I'd like to sort of do is level set on what are control towers and sort of where the solutions of control towers have developed and matured from their beginning. So if we think about what an initial control tower solution looked like, you had some transparency into some of your trading partners. This could be any number of kinds of trading partners depending on where in a supply chain an organization exists and what they're really looking to do or specialize in. There was a lot of there's a limit on the collaboration that organizations could have. There's also a limited number of levers that an individual could pull in order to make adjustments. So this is certainly better than nothing. You're definitely benefiting from additional visibility into some of your trading partners and understanding a little bit better about, say, what your demand forecast could be based on some of the information that's coming in. But it's not exactly delivering the sorts of value that are really transformative. The second stage that control towers went through was more around looking at the exceptions to rules that you had set within your supply chain. So if there were any sort of triggers that were fired at any point, having it be management by exception was a way to give more levers to a supply chain planner or operator, allowing them to work more in the solution and to get better results. So when we think about this, what enables this sort of thing, the real-time data is huge in this respect because you're going to have a good account of what actually happened or what might be happening shortly down the road. So the management by exception part of this basically reduced the burden on supply chain planners, but there's still a lot of touch points, a lot of human intervention that's required in these sorts of solutions. There's definitely value to them, but it's not quite where we might want it to go. So that brings me to this emerging paradigm shift with a number of organizations that I follow in my research, the direction that they're going in terms of how they're changing their thinking about what a control tower means and what it can deliver to an organization. So if we go back to what a control tower used to be in Control Tower 1.0 or 2.0, both of those are applicable. You had information that was still siloed. So you might have visibility through the control tower into your supply planning or into replenishment planning or fulfillment, but it didn't necessarily mean that information was being shared across those different departments of an organization, or even that the information was being shared between one of your trading partners and the actual organization itself. So even though you had the enterprise as the central figure, you had trading partners and you had visibility into your trading partners, it wasn't as if information was being readily shared across all of the organizations that are in the supply chain or in the value chain. So even when we're thinking about an S&OP process, it wasn't as if the information that was being fed into the control tower solution was being leveraged and used in any sort of sales and operations planning. So, so that was sort of the beginnings of where control towers used to be. And as we think about how supply chains have become more demand-driven, they're requiring greater responsiveness while being leaner. So you require something different. You require a system of interconnected organizations that seems much more logical. It can actually draw from the consumer side of the supply chain, looking at your demand, and then filter that information up through the system of interconnected organizations to give you greater visibility and responsiveness. So what does this really require from an enterprise? If we think about the enterprise as a central actor, it kind of fails to come to fruition. So we have to reverse our thinking a little bit and think about the enterprise as a piece of this larger network. So when we think about the third stage, say, of control towers, it's thinking more about what's outside the enterprise than what's inside, and how much information you can share, and what that really does from the ability of the organization to be responsive and make the necessary changes based on any exceptions that are coming in. So this requires a lot of real-time data coming in and out of the organization from the different nodes that exist outside of the enterprise. Now what this really concludes to is a real network situation. Instead of it being individual nodes, there's information sharing across the entire network. So network as a community would be a way to think about it. And it's every stage of the supply chain or of the value chain. It's not necessarily that hub and spoke that we were looking at in the last image. So there's a vantage point from each organization, and then when we're thinking about business flows that transpire throughout the supply chain, there could be multiple businesses that are a part of that, of each business flow. So if you're thinking from order to cash or procure to pay, there's many other different examples of business flows that would exist between enterprises. So you wouldn't necessarily be limited in terms of how you could conduct your business based on where your business began and ended, because there would be a collaborative way of sharing that information. The benefits of this has been a part of research that I've been doing. And in my discussions with customers who have deployed these sorts of solutions, I've been coming up with some metrics that are actually quite interesting. So if we think about how companies are better able to information share, they're better able to collaborate, they're better able to look at their risk profile and determine where their risks are. These are some of the numbers that they're able to achieve. So if we think about what this could mean for a large organization, if you're looking at improving service so you have 100% increase on on-time shipments, that is a big change for an organization. So the power of these networks is really something that that has been surprising to me in my research. I expected a certain level of benefit, but the extent to which organizations are able to collaborate and work together to a common end has been quite impressive. So the last piece that I'd want to speak on would be sort of where we see this technology going. And from a Nucleus perspective, it's always around value and how customers are really achieving that value. And there's a few capabilities that I'd want to point to. As we went through from 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, there were a varying level of leverage points or touch points for a supply chain planner or operator to make changes and to adjust to changing circumstances. And the next stage really for this would be to automate a lot of that process. So it wouldn't be completely taking the human element out of the supply chain, but it would be continuing to lower the burden and allowing a number of different technologies to come to fruition to help customers continue to streamline and continue to reduce the burden on supply chain planners. So some examples could be this self-correcting supply chain, where if you have machine intelligence that understands what the optimum solution is, or the closest to optimum solution that there is to an exception, that could automatically execute that. So you wouldn't necessarily need that exception to pop up to the supply chain manager. The machine intelligence would understand where to make the changes, the necessary changes to stay within the optimum band for either the inventory or for the replenishment, etc. So at a deeper level, we're looking at machine learning algorithms that the system could learn from each exception that was successful and learn what wasn't successful in handling each exception, looking at historical data as well, in order to determine what steps to take and where the actual optimal is relative to what maybe historically has been done when a certain situation would arise. And the interesting thing to think about when you're thinking about a network view would be if you had smart responses on both sides of a trading relationship. So if you had an exception that occurred, there could be an automated response on both sides in a bid-ask scenario, where they're looking for every node within the network is looking for an optimum solution and could come to one using automated agents on both sides, so that the level of human intervention would continue to drop, and the only thing that a human operator might see would be a notification that the system took this sort of corrective action, and it would exist between organizations. So that's my piece in terms of what Nucleus Research has been looking at from a control tower situation, and where we're seeing a lot of interesting things happening from a technological standpoint that are delivering value to the end customer. So with that, I'll turn it over to Adeel.
Thank you, Seth. That was very informative, and I think it gives us a good framework to sort of think about the journey from where we might start from visibility to all the way through to more of a control. So hello, everyone. I'll be discussing 3 case studies today from working with our customers, and they will be in the, spanning 3.0 and 4.0 capabilities. What you're looking at here is our network, a control tower over our control towers. One Network is a provider of platform as a service and software as a service solutions designed to enable and optimize consumer-driven, customer-driven business networks. We have a unique approach. Just like LinkedIn takes a network approach to managing professional contacts, One Network takes a network approach to delivering business solutions where companies join the network and conduct business by simply authorizing appropriate connections and business transactions. What you see here on the map is a heat map of all the activity across our network, and what the colors indicate really they're anchored on the IP addresses where these events have been registered. So there's actually a lot more activity happening in between those epicenters, if you will, where trucks are moving, inventory is flowing, and so on. But in this particular representation of the map, we just see where the proxy IP address is. So we have customers, for example, in Africa, where we have humanitarian and pharmaceutical implementations. We have customers in retail and consumer goods and automotive across North America, Europe, and Australia. We have a lot of activity here with our Department of Defense applications. We call that the dark cloud. We don't have too much visibility into the details there. So we have about 60,000 members on the network running transactions at any point day or night. So let's talk a little bit about how we've worked with our customers in going through this journey. In general, we see benefits come from three main ways. Either we automate routine tasks. We call that, actually McKinsey calls that taking the robot out of the human. There may be a lot of things you're doing, and many of those can be actually automated so that the people are freed up to do more cognitive, more subjective decisions. Then we also help people make better decisions by having optimization and intelligent agents, either acting in decision support mode or in an actual decision-making mode. So because we are able to codify those business rules, the optimization logic, the intelligent decisions in timely manner, we actually enable more people and more span of that decision-making to impact the organization. Many of our customers start out looking for primarily 1.0 level visibility or maybe some kind of predictive prescriptive analytics. But what we find is because we have this network approach, we're able to very quickly kind of take them to a 3.0 level, because that comes naturally with a network implementation. The network brings a lot of engagement and intelligence, so we actually refer to it as a system of engagement. Okay. Once people have taken their business processes and codified the orchestration of that business process in a network, then we can start adding capabilities around making that process smarter, more efficient, moving more and more tasks that are more data-driven to be directly made by the intelligent agents. So that's how we help our customers. I'll be talking through some examples of 3.0 and 4.0 here shortly. Before I get into that, let me explain a little bit about our unique approach. So traditional processes, you plan and you throw the plan over the wall to execution. Execution teams pick that up, because the plan may be stale, they may make changes, overrides, and even as one company executes, the ripple effect of that goes to their trading partners, and they plan, and then they execute, and then the next party, and so on. So you have a lot of latency and delay and disconnects that can happen. One Network's approach is very different. We, as I said, we bring all parties onto a common network. All companies are on the same network running the same network application, just seeing different views of real-time information through a very sophisticated security framework. In a network, if my company is buying from you, then my purchase order and your sales order are the same transaction. They're simply two sides of the same coin. They're simply two views of the same information. Then we have hundreds of intelligent agents that make optimized planning decisions continuously across multiple companies, event by event, during execution, and directly on execution data. So we don't have the issue of planning being disconnected from execution, because planning is happening within execution. It's happening event by event directly within the execution system. And because multiple companies are sharing the same system, cloud-based system, real-time data is shared, and anybody that needs to know and is authorized to know of any event, any exception, can know immediately and start acting on it. We call this optimized execution. So let me move on to my first case study. Before I talk about the specific example here, let's think about what happens with our oil changes in our cars. They say that we're supposed to change oil every 3,000 miles or every 3 months, right? That's a good rule of thumb, but it's a broad brush approach, and it's not tailored to the individual car and the individual environment that car might be. If you live in snowy mountains where there are a lot of steep roads and cold temperatures, you may have a very different need than if you live in sunny plains. So if you perform vehicle maintenance too often, you waste money and incur unnecessary downtime. If you do it too infrequently, you degrade the vehicle performance and risk catastrophic failure. So that is the exact problem that the US military faced with their assets out in the field and theaters all across Middle East and Europe and so on. And different theaters have different environments. So what we did for them is we've brought all of the assets, all of the theaters onto its common network, and we have sensors down to the individual asset. And what we're doing is collecting that information, and the asset actually triggers the maintenance replenishments and maintenance schedule. So we may have some planned maintenance coming up, and based on the sensor data, we can decide what needs to be, what can wait till the next planned maintenance, or if there's something that is at risk of failure that is too high, we may go ahead and intervene with a scheduled maintenance, with a new maintenance event, right? And then the network also orchestrates the entire replenishment of the parts, spare parts from various depots and supply lines. So this is part of the Copernican revolution I talk about, which is we've gone from thinking of us as a single enterprise to a network where we are tailoring the network response to the individual, and the entire network is coming together to serve that individual. In this case, the individual is the asset in the field. Let's talk about our next case study. This is a retailer with a lot of, about 1,500 stores around the world, and they have multiple concepts, and they use one network to orchestrate an end-to-end process that starts with sensing and learning demand patterns, and then that automatically triggers changes in replenishments and purchasing patterns based on what we observe at the stores. One of the challenges that this company had was particularly during their promotion periods. So during a promotion, consumer buying behavior may be less predictable than others. Some promotions really take off, others don't. And in their case, the promotions involved bringing together a number of different products to serve that promotion in an effective way. So the network helps sense how the promotion is performing, and then orchestrates the end-to-end. That includes transportation, replenishment, all working together to make sure that we have in stock and we have a successful promotion. One of the results that they've seen already with this solution is they have 40% improved forecast accuracy, and you can imagine how that can be a significant gain, particularly during promotion periods. We'll move on to my third case study. This is a small e-commerce retailer, a very innovative company. It's growing rapidly. They're disrupting their industry by offering low-cost products with top-notch features and top-notch customer experience. Fundamental to their business strategy is to have their people focus on customer experience rather than manually hand-holding execution. So they had excellent customer service metrics even before they joined One Network. It was just that they were growing so fast, they decided that they must have touchless processes if they were going to scale up and stay competitive as low cost and provide the high service, low cost offer to the market. They have deployed the SaaS services from One Network to implement touchless processes for order to delivery and procure to pay. You can see here with the results that in a 3-month period, their number of products grew by 5x, customers grew by 6x, and number of suppliers grew by 8x. And they maintained their high service levels, 99.5 plus on-time delivery, 95% plus perfect order, and their goal is 100% customer satisfaction. So what they're using the network for is proactive early warning. So the network may sense issues, resolve them as best as with the autonomous agents and so on. And if those issues that the network wasn't able to resolve on its own get escalated, and this is when the people come in and they may take additional actions, or they may approach the customer directly and make them alternative offers and take care of them. That way the customer delight is still maintained because it was the supplier, the retailer, that proactively acted on it rather than the customer calling and saying, where's my order? So they have, obviously you can see the metrics are already excellent, but for those rare situations where they have issues with customer service, this is where the people get into action. So it's an excellent case in point of where the man-machine delegation of roles and responsibilities has been worked out. Their people are focusing on service, and the autonomous network is taking care of orchestrating all the trading partners to maintain that high level of service. At this point, we're going to actually do a little poll. We will ask you where you are in your journey. And if I may ask the poll to be triggered, we'll take a quick online poll. And so think about where you are in your journey. If you have good visibility across yourself and your trading partners, do you have ability to alert on exceptions proactively, and do you have ability to predict what different actions might result in? You have a way to do what-if analysis, if you will. Does the network or the system suggest to you what decisions to make, and is it consumer driven? Is all the trading partners connected? Do we see responses already?
So Adeel, looks like about 65% of you have voted, and we're seeing that 43% have come in at stage 1, 41% have responded to stage 2, 13% at stage 3, and 5% at stage 4. Oop. But we're seeing a jump now. So the level 1 is in the lead at 46%. And level 2 is trailing behind at 38, and then there's quite a drop off to level 3, and there's only the elite at 4%. So thank you for all of those of you who have voted. Oh, votes continue to roll in. Visibility stage 1 is the big winner. So I'll close the poll at this time and turn it back over to you, Adeel.
Yeah, it still shows me okay. It's turned it back to me. Let's continue. So actually, we have our own quick assessment, self-assessment page here. If you go to our control tower resources, you will see a 15-20 questions survey that you can take at your leisure. And it will tell you where, based on some of the criteria I discussed today, where you stack up. That was a very interesting observation we got live right now. I think it's very consistent with what we've seen. We've talked to customers where they're still working with 1.0 issues, even if they have tools and systems that help take care of some situations at the 2.0 level or 3.0 level and so on. So that's representative of what I think we're seeing in the market. Wanted to mention very quickly how we can help you. Obviously, besides letting you understand where you are in your journey, we provide services. We can come in and investigate your processes, your overall objectives, and really help build a roadmap for how to move up this journey, and quantify the value, in terms of what that would mean in customer service, inventory reduction, revenue uplift, all of those things. So we provide these. One Network is also essentially a utility to help you run your business, your supply chain, and so on. So we can help work with that. So let's now transition over to the Q&A. We will open up the lines and take your questions. I would imagine some of your questions have already been sent in through chat. So Melis will be coordinating that, and Seth and I will take the questions.
Great, thank you, Adeel. We have had quite a few questions come through the chat, so just as a reminder, you can go ahead and send those to us. Our first one is for Seth. Seth, can you please elaborate more on the benefits that you spoke to and tell us where they come from?
Sure. So yeah, Nucleus research is all about quantifying those benefits. So when we talk to customers, that's what we specialize in, is figuring out where they're really seeing a lot of benefits. And if I had to sort of distill it down to three main areas, it would be ways in which companies are able to leverage the visibility, ways in which they're able to leverage the collaboration, and then ways in which they're able to optimize. So the holy grail really for some of these organizations is a single solve across not just their organization, but including their trading partners, 3PLs, all the way down to the retail shelf. So from a visibility standpoint, if they're able to see into what's coming down the line, say they have a supplier that is going to come up short, and they know that going forward, they can make the appropriate changes to their sourcing to guarantee that they won't feel any shortages or stockouts. So that's the visibility piece. Collaboration is in the same grain, where if they're able to collaborate better, they're able to make sure that they don't have to expedite, and so their costs would be lower on that respect. And if they're risk pooling across a network, then their inventory holdings don't necessarily have to be as high, because they'll be able to understand where their pockets of risk are. So the visibility, collaboration, and optimization pieces of a control tower solution that really connects organizations in a network, those would be sort of where I'd categorize getting benefits.
Adeel, did you have any comments?
A little bit to that, yes. One of the things, for example, Seth mentioned in his quantified benefits was a significant reduction in expedites. I think it's like 75%, right? But what we see in our customers is that usually the replenishment process and the transportation process in traditional situations are siloed. So you may end up having a replenishment system, a supply chain planning process, generate some purchase orders and replenishments, and then only to find out that that particular schedule can't be supported maybe at the warehouse or in the transportation lane or at the dock door, or the alternative happens is where they've padded it so much so that they make sure that whatever the supply chain plans can be delivered by transportation in time, so they end up carrying too much inventory. But what we do with a network, one thing that's possible with this, again, I go back to this Copernican shift where you're having a network orchestrate multiple companies towards a common goal, is that when the network suggests the replenishment plan, it will optimize for transportation and warehouse and supply chain all together. That's what we mean by optimized execution. So what that means is there is less back and forth once a decision is made, because one of the trading partners can't do it because the network has already accounted for multiple parties' constraints. And that translates to fewer expedites, fewer iterations, fewer second guessing, and so on.
Thank you, Adeel. So we've had several questions roll in on this one topic, so I'll try to group them. So one of the questions is, how do I start this effort? What do I do with my legacy systems? Another person asked it this way, why can't ERP do the same?
That to Seth or me? I can take it, Seth. Do you have any comments, Seth, before I?
Well, I would say that from an ERP perspective, I do cover ERP as well. There aren't any ERP solutions that I'm aware of out in the market that are trying to network network across the supply chain in this way. It seems like the opportunities are ripe in the supply chain as opposed to other parts of the business. So that would be my response to that. In terms of getting started, obviously from the conversations that I've been having, these are people who are a little further down the road, and it came down to, for all of them, trying to solve a business problem. Understanding that the market's changing, understanding that their business is accelerating, and needing to be able to operate a more lean enterprise, and ensure that they were cutting costs in every place that they could. So for all of those situations, when they were getting started, it was about addressing a business problem. And when Nucleus is looking at developing a business case, it's always about, what problem are you trying to solve for your business, and how is the technology there to address it? So that would be my response to that.
Okay, thank you. I think part of your question, the questions Melissa repeated here was, what do I do with my legacy systems and so on? I think I'll combine that to add on to what Seth said. ERP by design was centered on the enterprise, and what we're talking about today is for 3.0, 4.0 is a network-centric solution to what we feel is a network problem. Business is always between companies. It's not, you don't do business with yourself. And usually it's a value network that comes together to serve the end consumer. So if there's a network orchestrator, we call that a system of engagement that works across companies, across individual functional silos or functional systems, so on. That connecting the dots creates the real value. So to come back to the question, we actually work with all ERPs and so on across multiple companies, sometimes maybe even multiple ERPs within the same company. We actually come in, the network comes in as an overlay, as a system of engagement, connecting all the trading partners and delegating decisions, sometimes down to individual decision makers or to intelligent agents. In fact, we can over time flip those switches, if you will, where we say, here is the process we want to orchestrate. Here are the 20, 30 steps that this requires, and at this step, at the step number 5, this decision is going to be made by this other system in this company over there, or this other decision maker in that company, and so on. And so when we come in, we actually embrace all legacy systems. We work with them. We're not talking about rip and replace, but we create a level of intelligence across companies and across systems. And then over time, when it makes sense, if it makes sense, then we may end up switching the hours. We can put more intelligence in the cloud, in the network, and we may selectively replace some of those systems where we are able to add more value. So hopefully that helps answer the question.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate all of our attendees who are sending us questions. We want to be cognizant that we were aiming for approximately 45 minutes of content. So let's take one more. I'll group them, but we do commit, for all of you who have sent questions into us, we will respond to you individually. So please feel free to continue to share your questions with us. So this question comes to us in several different shapes and forms, but Adeel, the question probably is most appropriate for you. But one of the questions is, can you distinguish between one network and the control tower? How are those the same or different? And then keep that in mind while another question, another flavor is that, how is your product different from E2Open or Oracle?
That's interesting. Okay, so let's take the first one. How is one network different? What is one network with its control tower and so on? So first and foremost, we have a platform that is designed to represent networks. So we could implement sort of an Uber in that platform. It's a platform designed specifically around building applications around networks, whether it is managing supply and demand across trading partners, whether it is doing patient-centric healthcare, or whether it's doing something else. Its fundamental building blocks are around members and networks and connections and authorized activities, events and transactions. We have a notion of a multi-party transaction. So when we have a transaction event, it could be updating systems in multiple companies based on what they see on their end of that transaction. Right? We also have multi-party data management, master data management. We have a notion of community data and so on. So first and foremost, we have a platform, and then on that platform, we've built a library of applications. We have what we call industry cores. So one of the most deepest areas we have is around supply chain, and there we have modules and applications that span the traditional functions of bid and contract, transportation planning, supply chain planning, demand planning, supply, inventory planning, warehouse management, pick, pack, ship, all of those things, and all the way through to payment and doing scorecarding and enforcing terms and conditions of contracts in terms of service levels and so on. So, but we do that in an application layer that spans multiple companies and multiple functions. So we have one application that's actually doing all of that, all those different functions through intelligent agents that do very specialized activities, specialized decisions on sub networks is what we call them. So we are a network platform, and then we have a physical network. It's a federated network with many data centers around the world, and logically, if you're on one network, you could be on your local data center, if you will, but you can interact with anybody else anywhere in the world. So that's what we call real-time value network. It's the physical network that is connecting all our 60,000 plus members. And then on that, we have various applications, and one of them is our one set of them are our visibility and control applications, such as inbound supply, outbound replenishment, outbound distribution, and so on. That's where the control tower comes in. So hopefully I've answered that part of the question. It was a little bit long-winded, but I thought might be helpful. How are we different from E2Open or Oracle? Let's take Oracle. I don't believe Oracle is a multi-party network. ERP, they
aren't.
You may have, for example, you have Ariba as a on the SAP side as a network for procurement, but is the application designed fundamentally as a network application? And Seth, did you have a comment? I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, Oracle doesn't have a multi-enterprise network in its supply chain solution suite. They specifically, when I asked them if they had any plans to do so, their answer was no. So no product and no plans to build one, as far as I know.
So that brings us back to E2Open again. I don't want to get into sort of a competitive, discussion here and that. We're just at a technical and sort of academic level, right? First question you would ask is was the underlying platform that the network is built on designed as a network or as an enterprise-centric thing? And I won't say specific E2Open, but many of these networks that exist today were originally hub spoke, And those work very well because if you're focused on your enterprise and connecting your customers and your suppliers to yourself. But when that supplier needs to connect to another customer, do you end up having to connect to another instance? And can you really share, can you get a more of a network view? I'm not sure about that. And that's where our approach is everybody joins the network once, and you can choose to be somebody's customer, somebody else's supplier, and somebody else's trading partner, and you authorize those business transactions based on the permissions framework that we provide. So hopefully that answers the question a little bit.
Great, thank you, Adeel. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our formal webinar, but we would invite you to our resource library where there's more information on control towers. So this is one area where you can invest your time and learn more. Certainly, we also want to continue to extend the invitation for you to take the survey and find out where you are on the journey towards 4.0. In addition, we have the contact information for our two speakers, so you're welcome to reach out to these folks and engage them and continue the conversation. So we had over 300 folks from over 30 different countries register for our webinar today. Thank you all for your interest in this topic, and thank you for joining One Network TV.